Okay. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Campus Madrid, and welcome to our special Campus Expert Summit with Buffer. It's a great honor, and we're really happy to host today. Not only the whole Buffer team actually is here at campus with us this week, but its founder, Joel Gascoigne. Actually, how do you pronounce it? Because I can do the Frenchy Gascoigne, but I don't know if it's...
That's okay. I mean, that's the origin, so maybe it's better. But Gascoigne.
Gascoigne? Okay, yeah. Cool. And I wanted to start by saying thank you to you and to the whole Buffer team, because some months ago, we heard that they were considering Madrid as the destination for the next offsite. And then the whole attraction campaign started, because we really wanted them to come and spend a whole week here at campus with us. And in exchange, we say, why not giving back a little bit to the community? And they say yes from day one. And so this is why you see all these posters across the space, and they've given many workshops, talks, and sharing their knowledge and their insights with our entrepreneurs and community. So thank you very much. And so as many of you probably know, back in 2010, Joel started to build a product to solve a personal problem. And at the same time, he didn't know you were setting off to build a company that questioned the status quo constantly, and constantly exploring new ways to build a workplace for the future, 100% remote, transparent, flexible. And he's here today to share with us the journey. And let's start with the very beginning. Where were you born?
Cool, thanks. I'd just love to say, first of all, thank you so much, Sofia, and the whole Google Campus Madrid team. It's been really incredible. We've had the warmest welcome we could have imagined, and it's the perfect venue, perfect setup for us for our retreat. This is our 8th team retreat, because we're all fully remote team. We all, we work remotely together. We don't meet in person very frequently, so it's once a year right now, and this is the best setup we've had of any retreat out of all 8. So just want to say thank you so much for that. And hola, hello everyone. This is now 100% of my Spanish that you've just heard.
That's it.
So
and he's been here for a week.
So my apologies for that, but
okay.
But yeah, so I was born in Sheffield in the UK, so I'm British. And
how was your childhood? Were you the nerdy? Were you the naughty boy? I guess you were constantly asking why.
Yeah, I was the nerdy, quiet, introverted boy, and then I discovered computers at like 10 years old, and then that became a different world for me. And so yeah, I guess maybe that's today maybe quite a typical story. Like then I discovered coding when I was 11, 12 years old, and then went from there. So
very early on you wanted to build stuff, or you had another dream at that stage?
I actually, when I was about 11 years old, I really enjoyed online games. So I got involved in video games on the computer, on the internet, and then eventually involved in teams for the game. And then I was part of this team, and it felt like, oh, it would be really useful to have a website for the team. So that's how I then moved into building websites and coding, HTML, JavaScript, and then PHP, and that's kind of my transition. And then quickly that became a lot more interesting to me than the video games. And then from there I kind of started being able to build websites for clients. So I had my first client when I was 15, and I charged like £350, which was a huge amount of money for me as a 15-year-old. And that was an amazing moment for me, because it was this hobby that I'd had for quite a few years by then.
You could make a living.
I could make some money from that. So that changed my mindset and my worldview of like, what does work mean? Does work need to be something that you go and do and you don't enjoy, or is it, a hobby can become work? So that was a really amazing moment.
Awesome. So let's start. The idea today is to try to, in an hour, summarize the journey of Buffer. And I'm going to actually start with the pre-Buffer, which is when you started One Page. Not that much about One Page itself, but what you learned from it and where were your biggest mistakes.
Yeah, thanks so much. That's a good question. So I had a previous startup project called One Page, and I did that for about 1 year, 1.5 years. It wasn't very successful, no funding, no real success, just me and one co-founder. But some of the key things I learned from it was during the time I was working on One Page, I was really just building what I thought I should build and what I thought might be useful, but I wasn't talking to customers, I wasn't validating the idea, and so that was a big mistake. I was just building and hoping that that works and thinking it will, thinking that I know. And then, so during the time I was working on One Page, I discovered Eric Ries and his blog, Startup Lessons Learned. I was an early reader of his blog, and I just started really learning a lot about the lean startup concepts from Eric Ries. And for me, it was something where I knew I wanted to create a startup. I was very interested in entrepreneurship, and it felt a little bit like this kind of art, and I'm a very logically minded person, so I really loved that the lean startup became this framework for me of like, oh, now I just have to try and think in these ways. And so then after One Page, I said to myself, okay, now I have to really use that framework and try and fully do the lean startup and implement that. And so that's what I did, and I tried to be very disciplined to that with Buffer, and then luckily that was successful.
Actually, Buffer, you started it while you were still freelancing and while you were still with One Page, but it actually came from a personal point. How did the whole Buffer thing start?
Yeah, so after graduating from university in the UK, I knew by the end of university, I knew that I definitely wanted to try and create a startup. I wanted to have a project that could become what I work on full time. But it was very difficult because I had no track record, anything. So with One Page, I spoke to a few investors, had no success there. And so it was a real challenging time because I had to try and, pay the bills and get by. But I knew that I was set on this goal of, okay, I'm going to create a startup and I'm going to try and make that my job at some point. So I tried many different things. I was I worked full-time doing web development projects for clients for a while and got some funds and then saved those funds, and then I quit the clients for 3 to 6 months, and I just focused on startups, on trying ideas and One Page, and then I'd run out of money, and it was very difficult. So it was this constant battle, and so sometimes I would try and do full-time work to save money and then full-time startup. Other times I would try and do part-time both, and it was hard as well because I'd made friends that were creating web agencies and doing web development, and they were having quite a lot of success there, and I saw it as something, I could do that if I wanted to. Maybe, I had clients that wanted websites built, but I wanted to create a startup, so I had to deliberately say no and say, okay, if I can just do 2 days or 3 days of work, I can make enough that I can just get by, not necessarily comfortable. But so I think it's interesting because maybe if you do a service company, you can quite quickly have some revenues, but it's maybe not as scalable. And so I wanted to create a product, but that takes longer because you have to work on it for a long time without maybe getting some revenue. So I had to do that, but it's hard to see other people, building things and having employees and these things for a while.
And when did the Buffer idea, or how did it come from, and how long did you take to actually build the product before validating?
Yeah, so I was still working on One Page a bit, and then I also, at that point, I'd run out of money, so I had to get some clients again. So I was working full-time, 5 days a week, doing work as a contractor for clients. And then I was still thinking maybe One Page can still kind of work. But then I had this idea for Buffer, just from a personal need. I was using Twitter quite a lot when I was working on One Page. I was trying to network with other entrepreneurs, other people doing startups to try and stay motivated and have that network. And I found that I was reading articles on, startups, on metrics, on marketing, on different things, and sharing those on Twitter. But I found that I would be reading maybe 10 or 15 articles in one go, and then share them all at the same time on Twitter. And it was not good because in maybe 10 minutes I would share 10 tweets or 15 tweets, and then nothing else for the whole day. And it was not good for my followers. It's not good for me because I have nothing else to share. That's kind of where the first problem came from.
And how was the market at that point?
So this is 2010 with Twitter, so it was still quite early. There was not too much out there. There was Hootsuite and TweetDeck. They both had a scheduling feature, so you could say, take this tweet, I want to post it on Wednesday at 12:30 p.m. You could do that, but you have to set the date and time every single time for a tweet. For me, I was just reading these articles. All I cared about was there's space between the tweets. I just care that it's maybe 3 hours or 4 hours between the tweets, but that didn't exist. So that was my first idea. That was the first feature of Buffer, and that it was something that didn't exist and it resonated, and so that was kind of our way in. That was the MVP that I put into the market. So yeah, it was still early, and the ecosystem in Twitter was very exciting then, and then since then there's been many different changes there, and some products and some startups have not survived and others have, and things. So it's been very interesting, 6 years.
And so from the experience at one page, it's like you started building your product, but I remember you saying the other day is like my disadvantage was that I could code.
Yeah.
So the risk of actually just focusing on the product. So I think it's very interesting, and you shared it on your blog on how you went very, very early on into validating that this was actually a problem in the market, and that there was a fit. How did you do? And you can share.
Yeah, so it's very interesting. I find that when I speak with other people that want to start a company, sometimes it's easy to feel like, oh, we have an idea, but you don't know how to code, and it's like you're stuck, and you feel like, how can I start this without, and then you have to maybe find a technical co-founder or something, and it's really difficult. But the very interesting thing for me was I've been able to code for a long time by then. That was not my problem. And actually I found with one page, my problem was that I just coded. So I would just build the product and code. And so it was definitely a disadvantage for me. And so with Buffer, the first thing I did when I had the idea was the same mistake. I started coding, but I coded it to the point where I could just use it myself because it was solving a personal problem. So I made it work with no product, no interface. It was basically just working based on the database. So I could put things in the database manually myself with no interface, and it would work. And then as soon as I'd done that, I kind of tried to stop myself and say, I don't want to do that mistake again. So I decided what I need to do now is, like I said, follow the lean startup principles in a disciplined way as I can. And so I thought, okay, how can I really validate this? And so what I did was I stopped coding, building a product, and I just put together a landing page. I wanted to create a landing page for the product. Oh, there it is. So yeah, that's the landing page that I created. This is the first thing that I created, and I only spent maybe 3 days creating this. And basically the landing page was to make it look like the product already existed. So sometimes you have maybe a coming soon page, and it says right on the landing page, it'll say this product is coming soon, put your email in a box. But I decided, I think sometimes people, it's easy to think, oh, you want to just get a lot of emails. But actually the biggest challenge you have in the beginning is not that you want emails, it's more that you want to validate, is this actually something that can work? So I decided sacrifice the emails a little bit, instead have this landing page, it looks like the product exists, but then when you try and sign up, it doesn't exist. So there's only 2 pages, the landing page, and then you click sign up, then the next page is the page that says, this product's not ready yet. If you're interested in it, put your email in this box. So it's kind of like requiring people to go through that flow to get to the point where then I get the email. So then I know when I get the email, there's at least some validation there. And then I would make sure that I personally emailed every single person that gave me their email, and I would try and create a bit more of an email conversation and I had some Skype calls as well. And so that's kind of like the customer development, the customer research aspect of the lean startup. Try and really understand, do people understand it from the landing page? Is this actually a problem that people have? And then to try and get to the point of, would people use this, and will people pay for it as well eventually?
So actually, this is another part in which you also tricked the whole user with the pricings and without a product even, no? How did you set the pricing?
Yeah, so so the next step after this was, once I had some people gave me their email and I had some conversations and I felt I had the volume's not big, so it's maybe 50 emails or something. But I had some conversations with people. I had enough people say that they would use this product if it existed. But then the next step was I wanted to test the pricing. So the next thing I did was, that's the next thing. So I put a pricing page as well. So instead of 2 pages, it becomes 3 pages. So when you go from the landing page, you click the pricing button, and then you actually get to a pricing page. It still looks all real, and then you have to choose which plan that you want to sign up for, and you click that, and then you get to the same page where it says this is not quite ready yet. And then once I got those emails, I also had more conversations as well, and actually talked about pricing with people. And to mention at this point, I had people in the emails and friends message me on Facebook and things and say, this is a stupid idea. This is never going to work. You should stop wasting your time on this.
How long did this process take, more or less?
So the process of putting these landing pages together was only maybe 2 weeks. And then I had enough validation from that I decided I'm going to try and build the first version of the actual product. The whole process from having the idea to the first version of the actual product was 7 weeks. But even that felt too long, and I was also working full-time at that. So I was doing work for clients full-time as well. So this was evenings, weekends, and then eventually I realized that evening was difficult because I would be tired after working for clients. So I started working in the morning as well. So that's something I'd recommend if trying to do something on the side. Maybe think about the morning, because then you can be freshest and, prioritize exactly. So, are you trying to, do you really want to create something? Then if you do, you maybe try and put that first.
Okay, and how did you drive traffic in these first moments to kind of create a user base before even you had a product?
Yeah, it was, so at that point, it was actually just from my Twitter. So I was lucky because when I was doing one page, I was using Twitter quite a lot, and so I built up some followers. So at this point, I had maybe 1,500 followers, and so it was enough of an audience to get a message out there. And I also, and luckily also, the product was for Twitter users, so it's kind of the perfect place to share it. But it's not going to always work that way. So I think you need to maybe think a lot about who is the ideal customer for this, and where will they be, and then try and go there.
So now you have a product, you have a company, but you're still your co-founder. How's this process from growing from yourself to two co-founders to a team of, like, let's say 7, 8, which was the first phase?
Yeah, so after the 7 weeks, I launched this. Was lucky to get the first paying customer after 3 days. The first month by the end of the first month, had 100 users and 4 paying customers. And this was a fun moment because the price was $5 a month. So I was getting these payments that was just $5 a month. And it was a tiny amount of money, but actually is the first time I ever made money from a product. So I got this $5 and I was like jumping around my room. I was so happy. I literally was like dancing around my room because it was, even though as a freelance web developer, I could make, £300 in a day or something. Like, I was like, okay, now I got $5, but that's different. It's, it's product revenue, it's recurring revenue and things. So that first month was very small, $20 in revenue. But it was something different than I'd experienced before. It was different than one page, and so I knew, okay, feels like there's something here. That's when I got talking with Leo, who became my co-founder. We'd been in touch through university, and we'd always kept in touch with what projects we were working on. And we got chatting, and I told him, this seems to kind of be working. And he just wanted to help in whatever way he could. He's like, maybe I can do something. So I said to him at that point, I was already thinking, okay, I need to actually think about marketing. I need to think about blogging, doing these things. I need to use the Twitter account to try and do regular tweets and marketing and things. And so Leo just said, well, I can try and do that. And he's a few years younger than me. He was in his first year of university, but he just said, I can try it. So he just started doing 1 or 2 hours a week to begin with. We started out very lightweight, very casual, just to see, does this work? Do we work well together? Actually, with one page, I had a different co-founder, and it didn't work, and we had to finish that working relationship. It was quite difficult, so I was a little bit kind of scarred from that, and I was like, I'm going to do this by myself now. So it was good that it started casual for us, because I think it allowed us to not have any expectations, not say, oh, you're co-founder right from the beginning, no pay, nothing like that. But then over time see, okay, this is actually working really well, so let's make this a real thing. And that's something that we then carried forward into Buffer. So now with Buffer, we always have a 45-day kind of freelance period for new team members for both sides to see how's this feeling, things so.
So let's go into like hiring, and now you have a team of 7 people, and some of them in the US, some of them in Asia, some of them in UK. And so what was the moment in which you decided, let's go remote? How was the process? How was the decision?
Yeah, so we got to 7, 8 people, and kind of accidentally became remote already by that point. But it was because after starting in the UK, I went to the US. I was in San Francisco for some time. We went through an accelerator program. We raised some funding, but then after 6 months in the US, actually couldn't stay in the US because I didn't get a visa. And so I remember when we raised the funding, which was 500K in funding, I remember our article on TechCrunch, and the title was, Buffer raises 500K, gets kicked out of US. And our investors didn't really know that we were going to leave the US as well. But we couldn't stay because we didn't have visas. So we sat down, we said, what are we going to do? Where should we go? And we didn't want to go back to the UK because we spent a lot of time there. So we just opened Google Maps and had a look around the world. And then we just decided, let's go to Hong Kong. So basically we raised this money from investors. They didn't know we were going to leave the US. And then 1 month after we got the money, we'd go to Hong Kong for the next 6 months. And so this kind of was how we accidentally became remote, because we went to Hong Kong and then we started hiring, but then we hired people that I knew in the UK. And so that's kind of how it happened. And then so Hong Kong, and then we were in Israel for a little bit, and then eventually got back to the US. And then we were about 7 people, and actually about 4 people were in San Francisco. The other 3 people wanted to move to San Francisco. So we were in this situation where actually we could now decide we could be in San Francisco, and every next hire we could have in San Francisco, and that's how most companies work. But then we'd also had the experience of being in different places as well. So had to make a decision there. And it was actually very important because I got some advice from there's someone called David Cancel, one of my mentors, and he's a serial entrepreneur, had many companies. He recently, his most recent company was acquired by HubSpot. He became the chief product officer at HubSpot. And I got advice from him on this, and he said, just make sure you either fully remote or fully in one office. Just don't do the middle, because it's not good. People feel like second-class citizens. They feel left out when they're like people that are not in the office, and then there's people talking in the office. It's really hard. So I got this advice, and I was like, oh, that's the situation we're in right now. So I had to decide and spend a long time thinking, and many different reasons, decided that I wanted Buffer to be remote. So I emailed the team, we decided that, and then after that we made sure hiring, after that we were very deliberate about, okay, now we can hire anywhere but not San Francisco, just so that we can change that balance and make it fully remote.
So for many startups that are actually starting at some point and that first hire is, what are the benefits of actually this remote, and in terms of hiring, in terms of culture, in terms of your values?
Yeah, so almost maybe the primary reason, the two top reasons for us are probably ones that are maybe a little bit unexpected. One is for customer support. So I had this experience in Hong Kong where when we were in Hong Kong, we could do customer support, and at that point we were 6-7 people. Because we'd hired from all across the world, like when we were only 7 people, we had 3 people doing customer support, and we had 1 person in the US, 1 in the UK, 1 in Australia. So literally every time zone covered, even though we were a very small team. And it was something that we quickly realized we wanted to focus a lot on really great customer support. So that was actually one of our top reasons to stay remote, was so that we could have more time zone coverage and give better support. Because I felt, from my experience in Hong Kong, we realized we have Buffer customers in Hong Kong, we have Buffer customers in Australia, we have Buffer customers in South Africa, and everywhere. And so why should someone in Hong Kong have a worse customer support experience than someone in the US? So that was a decision we made. The other one was kind of a life philosophy one, where there's a concept called the idea of like the deferred life plan, which is that you end up deferring your life because you think, oh, I should sacrifice my life for 3-4 years. And I think this is very true in Silicon Valley, in the startup mindset, where it's say, okay, don't worry about health, don't worry about a lot of things for 4 or 5 years, because you just work hard, and then you'll sell the company, have an exit, and then you can sleep, and then you can go to the gym and things, and another thing is then you can travel. And so one of the things for me was we traveled so much by then, and I wanted to continue doing that myself, so selfishly for me, but also for the rest of the team. I wanted everyone else to experience that as well. So for me, the decision was also based on that personal life philosophy that I wanted to build into the culture as well, and say, we can travel while we work. It works great.
So a lot of flexibility, healthy, happy culture, actually access to more talent because you're hiring across the globe. But then actually in terms of communications, then you start to grow as a team. And how do you deal with managing a team globally in different time zones and getting that value in every single person that you hire, and also having the communications not becoming I actually have to be connected 24/7?
Yeah, it's really difficult, I'd say, even right now, to be fully honest. Like, I don't think we have it as good as we want to have it. We realize we use Slack a lot, and we love Slack, but at the same time it's very synchronous in its nature. It's, real-time messages. So we're finding that that's a challenge. I think the way for it to really, really work and scale well is if you can focus much more on asynchronous communication, asynchronous collaboration, so that, and I think recently we started looking at thinking about open source a lot more as an inspiration for that. It's a model that works well asynchronously. The challenge, the other side of it, is if we go too far with the asynchronous, then as a remote team, it's hard to feel that same bond with your team. So a little bit of synchronous is good because you have video calls, you see people's faces and things, because we only see each other once a year. So that's the challenge. But yeah, so I think that would be the best way to try and handle that and do it well. And of course, I think there are these challenges, but then there's also the amazing benefits as well, which is that for engineering, you have 24/7 time zone coverage. If the site goes down, you don't have to wake someone up in the middle of the night. You can have someone is in that time zone, and then same, like I said, for customer support and things.
So actually, at the very beginning, you were yourself like literally changing and solving the problems, and you had to like not have anyone mad because you actually just were sleeping and the product was not actually answering.
Yeah. So in the beginning, I was doing all of that, and I think that quickly became a challenge. But I think in the beginning, you do have to kind of do all of those things.
And in terms of customer service, actually, there's two biggest engineering teams at Buffer are engineering at Happiness, which is customer service. So actually, how do you like tackle that to actually stay leader in terms of always responding? What are your OKRs? How do you set the tone for customer success?
Yeah, I think so. We've always had goals around the response time that we can give. So we've always strived to have a very quick response. If someone emails us, I think we've had numbers around 50-60% of people that email will get a reply from us within 1 hour, and something around 80-90% will get a reply within 6 hours, and that's something that we've always focused a lot on. I think people are very surprised when they get a email reply after 1 hour. When they email support for a company, they expect it to be 3 days. So that's already helps a lot, and that's something that we try and keep consistent even as we grow. I think the other thing is one of the challenges we've had a little bit is as we grow, we're now 75 people, and so engineering and customer support, we call it the happiness team. They're kind of become separate, and so one of the challenges we have now as well is I think in the early days, if someone asks us, can we fix this, or will we build this, we could very clearly say yes or no, and no because this, and people can feel good about that answer. Now it gets a bit harder because there's that communication has to happen between the teams. So that's something that we're working a lot on, and creating kind of links between the leaders in those teams. And also we now try and track the amount of emails that we get for a specific feature in the product. So that means that we can track, for the buffer extension, which is one of our features, see what if the emails goes up 1 week, it suddenly goes high, then we try and create this kind of contract between the engineering team and the happiness team to say, that's gone high, now it needs to be kept within this threshold.
Another and very specific, but another core value for Buffer is transparency. So first of all, like more, I don't know, philosophically, but why is transparency so important for you? And then let's say, how did you apply it to Buffer?
Yeah, and maybe I can also just share some things, so in case people are not aware of some of the transparency. So Buffer, we have a core value of default to transparency, so that means that we try our best to say things should be transparent by default, unless there's a very good reason not to. So that made us start to say, question everything. Why? Let's make this transparent. This transparent. Sometimes it's not worked, but a lot of times it's worked for us. So our revenues are completely transparent. So we right now we make our annual revenue is $13 million. So that's completely transparent. User numbers. There's an online dashboard you can go to. It's a product called Bear Metrics, and we partnered with them to be the first company. It's a product for looking at your own metrics, but we talked with them and said, can we be the first company to make this dashboard transparent as well? So now you can go to buffer.bearmetrics.com and see all of our SaaS metrics. So our revenue, MRR, net revenue, gross revenue, you can see churn, you can see how many customers we have, you can see the growth over time, all of those things. The other big one we have is salaries. So salaries are transparent within the team, but also public as well. So you can Google Buffer salaries, and you will see a list of all the salaries in the company, every person in the company, what their salary is, and why, and things like that. So.
For example, actually, with sharing salaries, this is something that you established while you had already kind of a team. I guess, like, if now you join Buffer, you know, this is it. You take it or leave it. But how was the shift into actually sharing with your team that you were going to share with the world their salaries? How did they take it, and how did they drive them?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the first step we did was to make the salaries transparent internally, so just within the team. That was there was no resistance, there was no problem that people had with that. And we were also only 7 or 8 people at this point, so or maybe 9. It was quite a small number, so I think it's also easier if you do it when you're smaller. The next step was about 6 months after that. We continued to question why are we not being transparent, and so we questioned, okay, now we're transparent within the company, but why not share it outside as well? And so that was when so I sent an email to the team saying, we're thinking about making salaries completely public. This is a big deal for people. So at that point, there was 2 people in the team that didn't feel as comfortable with that. So we didn't rush it. We just said, this is something we're thinking about. I said, I spoke with people. I had lots of conversations. Really tried to see why is it. Where does that discomfort come from? What is some of the reasons that it doesn't feel good? Just really tried to understand completely why. And so yeah, definitely initially people were a bit shocked, and I think it's a natural thing to think, oh well, like it's almost like thinking, and in a way it's true that then everyone knows your salary, right? And I think even though it's not that you then just go and tell everyone your salary yourself, like it is there and they can find it if they want to. So it was a challenge a little bit, but after the conversations and spending some time, a month or so, we then got to the point where they were both comfortable and we moved ahead. And I think what happened is, I think afterwards, it was some fears that were not as extreme. In the reality, once it's out there, was not as some of the things didn't happen, right? You kind of think, and even when as a company, we thought, I tried to find any other company. There's not really a company. Maybe some government agencies have transparency a little bit, but it's not something that was out there. So even for me, for the company, I was thinking, wow, there's no company out there that makes salaries public. There must be a really good reason for that. I was like, maybe the world's going to end when I do this. But even it just didn't happen. So yeah, and it's actually there's been so many positive aspects of it. So.
And for example, regarding, I don't know, even competitors, and that question is, am I paying more? Am I paying less? Like having that,
Yeah.
and another thing that you have is having the salary formula, so that everything has a reason, no?
One of the key things that we saw come up, people would say, well, now I know how much I can offer somebody to poach them. So now I know, like you're going to lose so many people now, and we didn't lose anyone. Nothing happened. So, and I think for me, my answer to it is, well, if we do, then I think that's good, because I hope that salary is not the only reason that people are a buffer. So I think sometimes it can accelerate some of those problems coming to the surface, which I think is a good thing.
Sharing in the good times is good. You kind of brought everyone in, but then Buffer in its history has also gone through some tough times, and you still shared in that time. Can you share with us back in 2013, I think, when Buffer got hacked? Maybe share the story.
Yeah. So I remember it well. I probably will never forget it. I remember it was October 2013. I was living in San Francisco at that time, and it was a Saturday morning, about 10 a.m. And I was sitting at a coffee shop, and usually on Saturday I like to go to a coffee shop and just do some kind of. I was still like working quite a bit at that point. It's casual work or writing a blog post, some kind of side project thing. So I was just sitting there, just casually going through. And then I opened up Facebook, and I suddenly saw there's all these spam postings on Facebook of like weight loss spam, how to lose weight, and just a link, just very clearly spam. And I remember seeing it, and my first thought was like, oh, that sucks for that person that's had a problem with some app that they connected. And then I realized, and then I looked a bit closer, and I saw it said like via buffer, and I was like, wow. And then I scrolled, and I scrolled, and I scrolled, and I scrolled, and it didn't end. I was like, wow, I didn't even know this many people use buffer that I know, and it would not end. And then I went to Twitter, the same thing, and so it was like a jaw drop moment. It was like, well, we had a good run, but yeah, that maybe that's that. And then so it was a moment where we felt, okay, how do we handle this? And very quickly we spoke with each other in the team. Very quickly we knew, okay, we have to be transparent now. We've been doing this. We shared all of our numbers. We shared salaries, everything, and this is now the moment of truth, because even people have been saying to us, oh, it's easy to share, like the graph is going up and to the right, everything's good. So now is the moment. So we said, okay, we have to do this now. So a small team, and we very quickly tweeted just a very short tweet. Oh yeah, oh yeah, that was the first tweet, I think. And we basically just said, sorry, we've been hacked. We didn't know anything at this point. And so the scariest thing was to still be transparent when we still have not even started our investigation. And it's probably something that people would say is not even a smart thing to do. But we decided we have to do this. So we tweeted this. We started a blog post, very quickly put a blog post up that was like, buffer's been hacked, here's all the information we know. And then we kept updating it. So every hour, or at the beginning every hour, and then it was like every few hours for 4 days, we would keep this blog post up to date. We were all working around the clock. I remember Colin in the team, he was in the UK, and he was working all night. I remember being on a video call with him. It was all dark in the background. But yeah, we just kept sharing, and we learned different things. We started to understand what had happened. We started being able to solve some of it. We emailed all the customers as well, and some interesting things started to happen.
How did they react?
Yeah, so I think because we were sharing so much and we were responding, we also our number of tweets that we got for customer support spiked. I think it was maybe, I don't know, 10 times higher than our normal amount or something. But we decided that we wanted to reply to every single tweet. So we replied to every tweet. And I think when people saying something's going on with buffer, or and then we would reply immediately within 5 minutes, it started to turn very quickly, so that the whole community was rooting for us and on our side, and they were wanting us to succeed and solve this and make it through it. So it was a very special moment, and something that we didn't expect. We didn't know, oh, if we do this, then this will happen. But yeah, afterwards it became, there's articles you can Google buffer hacked, and there's case studies and articles saying this is how you should handle a crisis and things. So it was very cool.
Another crisis that many companies, when they grow, face is having to cut costs, having to lay off. How did you find that you need? I mean, you had some kind of experience. I don't know which year. How did you
Last
do
year.
it? How do you learn that you need to lay off, but mainly how do you approach it? And where do you find that balance into growing but not losing productivity?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So yeah, the other very challenging thing that we worked through is last year in the summer we had a cash flow crisis. We'd grown the team too fast. Our expenses started to exceed our revenues, and then quite quickly we realized that we were running out of cash in the bank. And then we realized, salaries are the biggest cost, so we have to do we have to do layoffs. So we said goodbye to 10 people. It was a very difficult thing to do, but it was what we had to do. And since then, it's helped us to turn around the cash situation. So the graph was like going down, and then now it's back a lot higher than it was at that point in time. But yeah, we realize, I think an interesting thing is that with SaaS companies and startups, a lot of the time you are losing money because you have funding and you just keep getting more funding and you're losing money. We just decided that we didn't want to solve this by getting more funding. So even though it's maybe a harder decision, we decided that we needed to cut those costs and do that. And so we've now, it's changed my own philosophy a lot. I don't want to do the crazy, I want to take risks, but in a calculated way. And so now we've been profitable for 8 straight months, and it's definitely had a big impact on the team morale that we're working on, in the ways that we think is best. But yeah, it's turning around, and we're profitable now, so it's going in a good direction. But yeah, that's also something that within the team and with the public, we try to be as transparent as possible. So there's a whole blog post saying how we approached it, how we like the way we realized it. We have the cash balance, the numbers, like in the blog post you can see the graph of the actual bank balance, and our projection based on if we do this, then like by doing this it will go this way and go back up. Our methodology for how we came to the decision of who we would let go and things like that.
And could you share maybe, now you're facing a next phase, kind of this is one of your last posts, I think, in the blog, in which you're sharing a little bit, I think it came from that moment, a new vision about how did you feel Buffer in the future. And this has come to your co-founder and your CTO to actually move on and look for new endeavors. Many people have that question on why, what happened, and I don't know if you're comfortable sharing it with them.
Yeah, I'm happy to talk a little bit about it. So, yeah, so we shared this on the blog maybe a month ago or something. It happened about 2 months ago now, and it's something that had been kind of on the way for a while, for several months. Leo and I have always tried to be very open with each other and have some quite deep conversations a lot. And so at the end of last year, we started to talk a lot about what is our own ambitions for the company. Where do we each want the vision to go? What type of company do we want to build? And a lot of things change in 6 years. So I think when we started, we were both babies. And I was 23, he was 20. So you grow a lot in that time. And I think at the beginning, we were really both learning a lot. And in many ways, I think in the beginning, Leo would look to me as kind of a mentor. But that changed quite quickly over time. And then after 4 years, 5 years, definitely not. I'm not a mentor as much for him. We're very much. I'm learning a lot from him. We're equals. But then we started talking about, what type of company do we want to build, and he is very, very much likes the more of the growth path, and he would want to push that more. And I started to realize that I'm very inspired by companies like Patagonia, MailChimp, Basecamp, and these companies. So I decided I really want to keep the team a bit smaller. I still want to do things that can help us grow the product and really create very useful products for customers. But I have goals to stay profitable now. I don't want to raise another round of funding. I want to try and focus on very sustainable, very organic growth. And also, the reason for that for me is that we've done a lot of culture experiments. So we work remotely. We've done the focus on transparency. We at one point we experimented with having no managers for 9 months. So we actually, anyone that was a manager was no longer a manager. And it was chaos, and it was a big learning experience. But we want to be able to try these things, and I think when you have VC funding, it can be difficult to do those things. We're lucky to have very, very good investors that are excited about us trying those things and even invested because we're trying those things. But at the same time, I think it can, even if the investor's not putting that pressure on you, put it on yourself because you have that funding, and it's like that mindset, and you kind of take that approach. And so for me, I'm keen to focus on profitability so that we have some of that stability and flexibility to say, because we have this much cash in the bank and we're profitable, we can try something, and if it doesn't matter, like it's not like we're so focused on this growth rate that if it drops a little bit, then we have to focus everything to get that growth rate back up, because we have to keep the growth rate high to be able to get the next round of funding. Otherwise, we'll get bad terms on the next investment. I think I'm just not as interested in that anymore, and I'm also much more interested in thinking about this journey as, even after 6 years now, it feels like with Leo leaving and Sunil, our CTO, leaving as well, it's kind of a new beginning again. It's exciting. It's something where I think now I want to think more in terms of, after 6 years, you go through enough time where you can't just be sacrificing things and health and things like that and relationships and things. So for me, this is now more of a very, very long-term journey in thinking about decades instead of just a couple of years. I'm not interested in selling the company, those things. I want to just keep going and think about things like profit sharing or dividends, and approach like some of the returns in that way.
So there are very few voices, I think, in the global ecosystem like this. You talked about some role models for you, like MailChimp or Patagonia. How can this model change, or if not change, at least have the possibility to have other voices, no? So are you seeing some movement in the ecosystem? Do you feel totally alone with this, with choice of path?
I think it's somewhat rare, but I don't feel too alone. There's quite a few companies out there, and I think almost like once I open my eyes to it and I say, oh, that's what I'm excited to try and do now, you start to see a lot of examples. Even in the last couple of weeks, I've had conversations with founders of other companies that want to do the same, and even with going through some difficult things with the company, the cash flow crisis or co-founder leaving, I've found there's other companies go through that as well. So now I can help them, which is really nice to be able to do. But especially when other companies go through some of those things, they also start to think, I don't know if I want to keep going on this path where I put that much pressure on myself. And so I am seeing it turning a little bit. But interestingly, it's really, sometimes it becomes this bubble that you're in, Silicon Valley, San Francisco, that mindset. It can sometimes be, you think that that's the way that tech companies work, but actually the more normal way actually might be this way, where the more normal way might be that you build, you make profits and you build a sustainable business. And so I do hope that, I'm very inspired by Basecamp. They blog a lot about this approach, or a similar approach. I think there's still quite some differences there, but yeah, we will definitely be sharing our journey, not as the only way, but as our way, as a way that, and have those conversations with others. And so, yeah, we have our transparency values, so we definitely will be sharing a lot about our learnings along this journey.
And just one and another couple of questions on loss is like this again has been kind of a crisis in terms of internally mainly. How have you dealt with it mainly internally with your team and having them like be aligned with your vision? And
Yeah, so one of the first things I did was I made a kind of a crazy decision that with this news, I wanted to, as much as possible, I wanted to share it personally. So I decided I'm going to have one-on-one conversations. I did that for about 75% of the team. So I had about 60 50, 60 separate one-on-one conversations of video calls to share the news. So that was the first thing, because I wanted to share it personally myself and hear people's reaction. It's a big thing. Some people have worked very closely with Leo and Sunil, and so talk with them how they feel about the last year, because we had the layoffs as well, and learn from people. And then this retreat is a big part of it. We actually, one of the things in our cost cutting was that the 8th buffer retreat was meant to be in Berlin. We already planned it, and then we cancelled it because it was going to be 400k cost saving for us, so we cancelled it. And then, so this has been a long time coming. It's the longest amount of time we've gone between one retreat and the next. A lot of people there's about 25 people in the team that had never met the rest of the team. So to go through all of these things and remotely and not be together is a challenge. So this is a moment for us to be together and try and build back up. And I just try and keep sharing the vision now, and try and have some consistency, because there's been a lot of surprises and hard things to hear in the last in the last 6 months or 9 months, and so try and keep that communication and going and have that consistency for people.
So I'm very happy that you guys are all together here in Madrid. Hope you enjoy it. And so where do you see yourself in, I don't know, next 5 years, or is it too long? How are you? What's the future in terms of 3 years, 5 years?
Yeah, well, we will keep growing our profits. We will think about the social media market is interesting to think about what is happening in it. There's different things going on. A lot's changed in 5-6 years, so there's aspects of the industry like organic reach is kind of declining a bit. It's more becoming paid, so more like Facebook ads and sponsored posts is growing more. We have a new product we've been working on for about a year, and it's really starting to take off now. It's called Respond. So that's something that is for social media customer service on Twitter and Facebook. So this is also quite a new market as well, because Twitter and Facebook are investing a lot into their platform to add specific customer service functionality into Twitter and Facebook. So that's something that we have a new product. We're excited for that to grow. That's the first time we have separate revenue stream. So I'm excited for more kind of a diversified, multiple products. That's going to be good for us for stability for this path, because that's going to be important for us. So yeah, there's a lot of things that we want to do with the product and the culture again to continue that experimentation and maybe bring back some. I think there's transparency has felt like it's actually decreased a little bit in the team in the last year because of some of the things that we've gone through. So there's a lot of work to focus again on the culture, try and get things running really smoothly. But there's a lot of exciting opportunities as well. Looking at our numbers, we have a new VP of Finance who joined us at the start of the year. 1 week after she joined, I had to have a conversation with her and say, thanks, I'm really glad that it's your first week at Buffer, but now Leo and Sunil are leaving. So it was a big deal. But she did a session today with the whole team and shared her like financial models and all the exciting opportunities. So we're seeing that the churn rate is quite high, a little bit high right now. We want to improve that, get the churn rate down. There's very interesting things between the people that are paying monthly or paying annually. Annual plan is much lower churn, so we can try and help people see the value of maybe you get a discount on the annual plan, so if we can help people get over, we might be able to reduce churn. And then thinking about our pricing, there's many opportunities to improve our pricing as well. I think that's something that you should be experimenting and changing your pricing quite regularly as well. But yeah, really long term, it's gonna, I think, this all could change, of course, but think about diversified kind of methodology where we'll have multiple different products. They can connect together, but a big focus for me is on simplicity. We hear that customers love the simplicity of the Buffer product, and if we keep adding more to it, it will not stay simple. So I'm more excited about the idea of Respond. So instead of customer service features in Buffer, we have Respond as a separate product. That's the approach that we want to have, and that's going to be exciting because then it'll be good for the long term because different products, different industries are at different points in their life cycle. So we can try and handle that with different products. And then, like I shared, I would like to get to the point where we can be profitable enough that we can also share that back, and everyone in the team can benefit from that. So through profit sharing and some of those things. That's the third.
Thank you so much. So every single interview at Canvas, we finished with the same tiny little quiz. It's just to get to know a little bit more our audience. What is your favorite word?
My favorite word.
I should have warned you.
Probably awesome, which my family is surprised. It's not really a British thing to say awesome. And I went to the US, I started saying awesome all the time, and my friends, my family are like, what's going on? So American now.
And the least favorite?
My least favorite word, I think, but. Which is like, I think it can be in your sentence. It's something we found as well with customer support, that sometimes you say something like, you'll say something but something, and it can really like negate the first thing. You can say negate the first thing. So we try and change but for and. So say that instead.
What turns you on?
I think questioning things, doing things differently. I get really excited about coming up with new solutions, and I don't like to follow systems. Can sometimes be a bad thing.
You don't have to swear it. What turns you down?
I think actually, like, I'm a very strong introvert, so there's a point where I love to be with people, and then like, and I, especially with like meaningful conversation, it's very exciting, and then my energy can just drop, so it can be just gone. So that's just like stimulation. Like I'm like I guess it's like hypersensitive person kind of thing. So that can also be a challenge, but yeah, that's play.
If you started another company now, you would focus on?
I would focus on company culture, and I think I would do the same things. And it's I talked a lot with my co-founder, with Leo, about his decision to move on, and he asked me, "How do you feel? Are you tired? Are you still excited about this? Maybe we can try and sell it." And so this is a new company now for me. So I'm doing exactly what I want to do. That's also something that I always try and stop and question and say, am I happy right now with, or do I need to change something? So I always try and keep doing that. So yeah.
Awesome. And last one, I promise, the best advice you would give an entrepreneur?
Best advice. I think just that you don't need to know as much as you think you might need to know. You don't need to go and get industry experience. You don't need to have, there's a lot of things I think you don't need that you maybe think you need. I didn't know very much at all, so I just get started. If you want to try and do something, just go and do it. And then the second one would be to ask for help and advice as well, because actually very inspired by someone in the team. Tom is one of our product managers. He started just emailing. He emailed the head of product at Instagram recently, and just got a reply. People often are very excited to help someone. They've got a lot of help on the way as well and things. So, yeah.
Thank you so much, and thank you, Joel, for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.